Okay, she's got it. So, and this is a very common thing. So typically what you would do is fill out an affidavit of heirship. You provide whatever information you have. You go to the bank or to wherever a notary is, and you sign it and going, hey, listen, I'm the person that owns this area. In the cases of some of these areas over here. In the case of Miss Bonnie, if she purchased or if she paid for a one-time maintenance fee to be next to her husband, that she would become a plot owner. Filling out a piece of paper and getting it notarized and getting it to the Board of Trustees is how we do that.
So that would stand as the only proof. Like,
right.
Take this.
Right. And again, the Board of Trustees, yeah, you know, you're gonna say, listen, here's my grandfather. He's obviously here. I'm a descendant. Out of all of the descendants, there's another form here that says designation of an authorized agent. You may have an older aunt who just doesn't want to deal with it. If she says, yes, you take care of it, fine, fill one of these things out, and then the Board of Trustees knows who they're dealing with.
So a descendant can go and fill out one of those and take it. So it's not necessarily a wife that has an extra space next to them.
Right. So, and again, in the plot owners thing, I've actually included the state law that describes who a plot owner is. So assuming, I'll use this example. Let's say that my parents bought 5 grave spaces. My father died, he used 1. The other 4 go directly to my mother. When she dies, then it goes to the surviving kids, unless it was deeded directly to one child. Once all those 5 spaces are used, there's nothing left to own. There is no longer a plot owner. There's a group of descendants. The descendants have certain rights under law to come visit, to do things. Hang on. Shut that off. Descendants have certain rights by law to come visit, to decorate and things like that, but they don't own anything anymore. It's being used. Okay, so there is a distinction between a descendant and a plot owner.
Okay. For plot owners, say we come in because we have descendants here, we buy a bunch of these plots, like you said, 5. What if we buy 20 plots and then we want to sell some of those plots to other people? What?
Okay, so
others from selling plots at $10,000.
Exactly. So, and again, typically, if you own space over here, and again, this is where it starts to get fuzzy, and the law doesn't address everything, but that's where the Board of Directors come in. Typically, you prevent somebody from speculating, buying spots and turning around and selling them. When you adopt your bylaws, you address that in there.
Where did you get this list of?
Okay, the list of burials was created because there is no list. You can't go to an office and say, who's buried here? You're required by law to keep that information. So what we did was we went to online to find a grave. There are people that come out as a hobby and photograph headstones. Find a Grave was a source. There's billion graves. There's a list over here in 1965. A descendant went through and wrote down all the names on the headstones and published that list. I found it. It was online. So we find all the online sources and we try to put all of those into a list to ensure that we know that everybody who is there. We know that there are going to be graves that are not marked. That's where you come in by providing that information.
So, just out of curiosity, before you started, you mentioned that there was a problem or problems. Understanding what you're saying about the regulations of the state, what were the original problems?
The original problems?
You said there was a problem and this would address it.
Oh, okay. So
not addressing it from a state regulatory
right.
perspective.
So one of the problems is that typically a cemetery is the only piece of property you sell once, but that you should maintain forever. Once a cemetery gets full and it's not generating any income, more especially we're seeing it over here, once you get past the 2nd generation, you will most likely go visit your parents and possibly your grandparents' graves. Once you get past that, the chances, and it's not necessarily true over here, but it's very much true over here, the families die off and they move away and somebody has to manage that space. Okay? The problem was, for instance, there was some crackhead come driving in here late at night because it wasn't gated. He smashed into some fences and then smashed into another piece of property. She ran, Miss, raise your hand. She was here and found it, called the police, but because she wasn't the property owner, or wasn't speaking for the property owner, the police refused to file any charges against the guy. He was arrested and taken away, make no mistake. But without a legal owner of the property, there's nobody to speak for anybody.
So completely not related to this. So say you're a descendant, we've used up all of our plots, right?
Yep.
So after that, if you wanted to acquire another plot, you would have to purchase one because this is public. Like, how does that work?
Right. So again, that would be something that the trustees,
So
that would be a trustee and the association would make those decisions.
Okay.
So, you know, there appears to be lots of spaces in this one.
But if any nationality, can they get buried?
Exactly. So,
Because these are Hispanic.
no, I get it. So that's a great question. The question was, at one point, these were segregated. You can't segregate anymore. You can choose to be segregated, even though Miss Edwards is Anglo. She purchased a spot over here because there was somebody who was willing to talk to her and meet that need, and that's absolutely what the 1934 deed had in mind. You know, a burial space.
More than one person.
Right, no, more than one, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. They've done a great job. They've done a great job in that aspect. But again, one of the things is some of the housekeeping issues, and we've started to address those, and we'll continue to address those. Just up front, but eventually it needs to be a board of trustees that looks at everything and says, okay, what's best for everybody?
So you're saying that anyone can buy over there if we were to choose to have a board of trustees?
Once the board of trustees is
Once
elected.
a board of
You have to
trustees
have
is
a board of
elected.
trustee elected before any purchases can be made, actually, to have a...
Right, because nobody owns it.
Have a record.
There's nobody who owns this property. Nobody can legally make any decisions.
But we
So
have
who's owns it?
trustees right now.
Okay,
Who
so
was it?
We have
okay.
trustees. I cannot stop burying.
No one's asking you to stop. Okay, so let me address this question first.
So who sold land over there? You said someone bought. Who was selling property there?
A trustee.
Who was that?
We don't know, and that's why I'm trying to get these people together to figure that out. But again, we're several generations removed,
So who wrote a check? And who'd you write it to?
and again, you know, it was done by a handshake, much like this. If I were to be, and again, I'm riding on top of the fence. I'm not picking
Right.
sides here, but again, I would assume that if there's a group of trustees here, that maybe they've been elected or just appointed or self-appointed, that they would have been keeping record of all of the monies that came in, all of the burials that happened. Wouldn't you assume?
Yes.
Okay, so the question you would ask if you're part of this group is, do we have those records? These people over here, the few that I've talked to, and it's just a few that I'm going to meet more, I'll get to you right next, is I'm trying to get them to figure that out. It's their grandparents that did that handshake deal.
Old school.
You know, it was old school, just like it was over here. I have no illusion that someone's going to come up and say, hey, I got a deed from Uncle Billy Bob. It's not going to be there. That's why I'm going to answer that question next. That's why we've looked online and found these things as a gap stop to try to fix that. Now, if somebody comes in and says, I'm the owner of this one, and somebody says, no, wait a minute, I'm the owner of this one, then the board of trustees would say, you guys need to figure this out. Okay, I'm ready to answer your question.
So if nobody owned this land, how is the crematory there? Is it supposed to be there, and or have they been paying a rent to be there?
Again, that's one of the questions I've started to ask, but at this point, they don't have to answer to me. I understand that they built it there and that they do pay some rent, but again, I can't go say, show me your lease, show me your other things. That's something that the board of trustees would do. So the advantage that this site has over all the other ones, there's over 200 sites just like this in Travis County, is that you have a viable business here that in theory should be paying a lease.
Correct.
That money would go to the board of directors to address issues, be it
Because
tree work.
If you allow that, he pays his rent. Nobody should ever have to pay a maintenance fee because he should be taking care of that.
Well, no, you don't put the whole burden on him. It depends on what you can negotiate. Again, I don't know what that's going to be, and that won't be my decision. That's a board of trustees.
May I offer...
Hang on, just
negotiated right now? Here?
There is something, yes, but again, you know, that we can be discussed and
right. You know that is not this discussion. That discussion happens to a board of trustees. This isn't a lynching and a pointing of fingers. The other thing that's really important about this piece of property is, at some point, when it was down, you know, in the 1960s, the whole area around here was designated as a cemetery. There's a guy who bought it.
On cemetery right now. This is cemetery property here too.
The guy who designated this was going to create a cemetery all the way around this thing. You'll see that on this piece of paperwork right here, and I'll send it to you. And then for some reason they failed to, they incorporated, they did all those things, and they failed to do so. Where those cars are, that road is ideally belongs to Kennedy Memorial Gardens, a corporation that incorporated. Oh, in the woods over there, they had platted out graves. I don't think they ever buried anybody there. But then they went bankrupt and they just closed up shop. When they did that, they blocked access to the cemetery. So when you look at the current appraisal district maps, see where that green fence is? When the people sold the lots around this, they left a lot open for access into these cemeteries. Legally, that piece of property belongs to the cemetery but there is no legal group. When I discovered that, I went and talked to the man who's using that piece of property, and it was all overgrown. His kids were, you know, there were snakes and things like that. So he cleaned it off, and now he's got travel trailers, construction material. I said, you don't own this property. If you choose to incorporate and you have a board of directors, then they can go get title to the land and then go to that piece of property and A, start using it as burial ground, or B, choose to go to a judge and get it removed from the deed record, undedicated as cemetery property, sell that lot, and then have some seed money. Just like any potential lease that they would have from this one. That puts you far ahead of anybody else that has an old cemetery in Travis County. You've potentially got two sources of income, but nobody legally has the right to tell that guy anything because nobody owns the property. So the first step would be to say, looking at the big picture, how we've been managing things in the past as individual groups, going, there's got to be a better way, and then deciding to do that, and then electing a board of trustees, adopting a set of bylaws, and then opening up membership to descendants, and then descendants will have a say on who gets to be elected trustees, what the bylaws will be like. You know, membership could be as cheap as $10 a year. And that's how you set those monies to make sure that you have money to address things like, we've got illegal dumping, we need to put a fence up to keep people out. Where's that money going to come from? Well, it comes from that source or that one, or by getting people to pay in $10 a year just to help maintain the issues. That's not to say that you can't get a group of descendants and say, hey, we're going to have a work day, we need to take down some trees. And someone says, well, I got a chainsaw, I know how to do that, I'll come out and donate some time. That's how it used to happen in the past, I'm sure. People would come out twice a year and take care of grave sites. But as families die off and move away, nobody does that. You're lucky over here, you still have families that come and visit. Not so much over here.
Can you see?
Because this side, we care about our cemetery.
Well, I understand. And I've been looking at old cemeteries since 2000. I've done African American cemeteries, they're old slave cemeteries. Culturally, they are different.
Yeah, this is still active, very active.
Right. And so Di Maria de la Luz is down in South Austin, not far from my house. In 2008, I helped them through the same process. They're just about filled up. You know, they were just about filled up when we mapped that thing. There were just a few spaces left. Once you sell that last space, this one here used to be down a line this way. You filled up, and then they removed the fence, and they took over the next piece of the pie. I've got no problem with that. You've got just this little tip of that pie left. Then you're going to have to expand somewhere else. The logical space would be on the other side of that building. Create new burial space so you can keep doing what you're doing now.
Because we had some, I guess you need to also explain how many acreage each group was at the beginning, and there was common area.
Right.
So
you see that on this map right here. From 1965, it's surveyed in, and you can see clearly the Anglo section, the Hispanic section, and then the African American section, and then you have common ground. And so
And
You-
legally, we surveyed it, and it was okay legally, and so that's why it was extended a little.
Right. So now I just understand that they had it surveyed. They platted things out. Those records should not be kept at one family's house, much like Miss Leatherwood kept her stuff. And then when she died, the kids go, I don't know what this is, and they threw it away. It should be part of the trustees, the board of directors should have that information. So when someone says, well, wait a minute, is there a lease? The board of trustees would have a copy of that lease. They would have a copy of this thing over here. Used to be back in the day, you could create a cemetery, you bury anybody you want. Nowadays, the government wants you to have a list of who's being buried where. You know, we had a tornado come through Gerald. There are cemeteries that big wind events come through and obliterate everything on the surface. If you don't have a map, then you have no idea where anybody was. So when we had the floods a couple of years ago, coffins popped up out of the ground and washed downstream. They had no idea where they belonged. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so once all the legal stuff is out of the way, and we have the trustees designated in a few months or a year or whatever, however long it takes, we could technically take all the fences down and it'd just be one cemetery.
You could, if you wanted to. You could take the fence down.
That would be a board, the trustees.
The trustees and even the membership. So once you have a set of trustees, then you have a membership class, and then they would bring things up for a vote, and it would be discussed.
Because I mean,
Send it
technically,
to
it's
them.
not as segregated as it used to be because Bonnie's husband's over here. My friend's son Sean is over here.
Right.
100 years, like 30 years
Yeah,
ago.
we have never considered
So, I mean,
just
technically, it's not
one
segregated, so the
culture,
fence is
one
kind of
ethnic
obsolete.
group.
Well,
It's
the
always been open.
fence is somewhat obsolete. Now, in cemeteries, there are state laws that deal with what is called the historic fabric of a site. You don't want to change a bunch of things, and that's where the Texas Historical Commission comes in. You could probably take down this fence, and that's fine. It would be documented, and then you could extend the burials up this way. You could make the driveway this and make this burials. You could
that
do
would alleviate some of the we care about our cemetery versus how
right.
we don't care
But again,
about
that's what the board of trustees is elected by all groups. Anybody who has an interest here can be a member. You know, if you chose to open up your membership to people who aren't family, I'll pay $10 a month. I mean, $10 a year.
And that's with a nonprofit.
That's with the nonprofit, and you can make a donation and write that off on your taxes when you're a 501c3. There's a lot of benefits to doing that. If you're a 501c3, you can talk to the county and go, listen, we need to open this up. We want to meet the needs of the community, but we need to expand this, but we can't afford to do stuff. If we cut it, will the county come in and take the trash away? They're more likely to work with a nonprofit than they are somebody says, hey, I'm a trustee. Where's your documentation? Well, we haven't had a vote for many years, but trust me, I'm the guy. You know, at some point we can move beyond that. Yes, sir.
Do descendants have the ability to vote on items or just plot owners?
No. So the plot owners are the ones, according to 71122, who vote to incorporate. That doesn't say descendants, but descendants become part of the membership class. So let's say you say, as a descendant of somebody who's here. Now this is Mark Sines. He's a friend of mine. His parents and he's got both parents and an uncle here.
Brother.
And
Brother. Okay. So he could choose to be a member for, let's say, $10 if that's what you decide. And then as a member, a paid member, he can vote on issues in front of the board. What you don't want to have is just a bunch of descendants coming in and go, wait a minute, I think you need to do this. Then you have chaos. You have a membership class. And again, that's defined in your bylaws, and those bylaws are adopted by the trustees, and then later on the membership can vote to change things. If something's not there, the membership says, hey, I don't like this, we're going to vote to change that.
So make it easier to understand. The trustees are the ones who bring the issues to the board, and the members are the ones who vote.
So the two steps. First off, plot owners vote in to incorporate. That's the very first step. Then the plot owners, once they've decided to incorporate, can create that class of membership. Now you have descendants involved in that decision. The only decision plot owners make initially is, yes, we want to incorporate.
Since there's no board of trustee, who do you go to for that, to incorporate? You know
So
what
in order to incorporate, the law is very clear. You post a notice like this on the sign, and you run an ad in the newspaper for 30 days. Initially, I thought, That simple, let's do that. Then once I started looking at the dynamic and realizing that I hadn't contacted this group over here yet, we haven't had any meetings, I was not going to do a backdoor deal, run an ad in the newspaper, get 3 or 4 people to show up and incorporate and not involve you with it. We chose not to run the ad in the newspaper, which is going to be a lot more expensive than the $47 for that sign, to hold this meeting and perhaps several more meetings so everybody clearly understands the dynamic. Get you educated into what the possibilities are, so when it comes time for a vote, we don't have a group of people going, wait a minute, we didn't know anything about this, shut it down.
And that's exactly what has happened today, so that's why it's not really a formal meeting, it's
Right.
just introduction.
Right, again, this was just to discuss what, the possibility. You could, if you got the plot owners said, no, we don't want to do this, we want to keep things as they are, you have to understand that you've got no really legal authority. You can't address that guy over there. Even though the Hispanic Association or trustees have an agreement with this guy here, then that, these people here should have a say on where that money goes, because ideally, that's not on the Hispanic cemetery, that's on the common area. So again, I'm not here pointing fingers. I'm looking at things as a whole and trying to think how I can present this so all the interests are met. The African Americans, I haven't heard from anybody over there, and that's going to take a lot of work to go from the other side of that building and clean that off and expand. But you can do that, But ideally, the trustees for this are locked into this little fenced-in area. These folks over here, if you said not to incorporate, these folks over here could raise the flag and go, wait a minute, that area over there doesn't belong to them. It makes sense to bring everything out onto the table and discuss it and then elect some trustees. I think the trustees would probably meet about twice a year at this point. It's not something that's going to happen every week.
The trustees would be for all 3 sites?
Yes. So it's not, the trustees are for the one piece of property. Basically what we have is 3 separate cemeteries and some common area on one tract of land. When you start going to get a historical designation or anything like that, they want to deal with the land as a whole and not just one subset, what's best for that group. And that's why we said, wait a minute, I can't just do this. I'm going to continue to clean, photograph, and map this, create burial lists so the trustees will have something, and then I'll come through and have a scale map that will show where everybody is. But it's going to take a lot of work to get these people to tell me what's going on over here. I'm sure this group is ready to talk about this.
Well, all of this started because there was one complaint person, and then we started the conversation. And now that we didn't even know
Right.
who were the people out there and who were. This is a good opportunity.
Yeah, so it's a great opportunity.
And maybe to just because we didn't know who was really because we've always been a group of the same family doing all the work.
Right.
Year after year for years.
Yeah. No, and that's a very common theme. This is unique out of all the ones I've ever touched because it's 3 separate groups essentially. Typically I go in, it's a very small cemetery and it's really simple to do. This one has a different dynamic, so it's a little bit more complicated, but it's not doable.
So again, I think, a lot of this is recommendations, right?
Yep.
I've sat on 2 501c3 boards like this, not like this. Guys, it's a lot of work. And I tell you one thing, the Board of Trustees are not made up of members that are supporting that organization. Because you got to have independent judgment when someone brings something to you. It is a lot of work. You incorporate, you get your 501c running, you have to have meetings. You're going to have to speak to an attorney to set this up. Yes, they might have guidelines.
You have to have a special accountant every year.
Yes, you're going to have taxes. You're going to have to bring all these people in. He's recommending this. You could also get together and talk about it as a group and figure it out.
And that's what plot owners do. But again, in order to get title to the land, that's the important thing. You do not have title to the land.
And technically, at this point,
Yeah.
from what we've all heard, there are no plot owners. Because none of these properties were selling, nobody has any deed. So even that point, just getting to the plot owner point, is really on trust between all of us that we care about this cemetery.
Right, and the board rotates. It's not a seat that sits forever. It's
And-
a rotating board, and if you don't have a member that you elect,
Yeah, and
it's defunct at that point.
So,
another very important to bring up about a board is that boards, just like a group of, because that's all they are, is a group of volunteers that say, hey, we're going to step up and we're going to try to manage this thing. Well, guess what? They die too.
Yep.
They move off. They don't get replaced.
So
So you can end up in the same place. And then you have another issue. You have another issue in that when it steps out of being a community involvement in a community cemetery where we take care of people that have died and we get them a space to rest forever, now you're bringing in money, and you don't have any choice but to bring in money. Because you have to maintain the attorneys, you have to maintain the taxes, you have to maintain everything. So now you're bringing money into the picture. And when you bring in money into a picture of a bunch of volunteers, you're asking for trouble.
So let me
not
address
this
some of these real quick.
Maybe not this decade, but decades down the line.
Let me address this real quick. First off, there are no taxes on cemetery property. It's not taxed.
That's what's
And wait a minute. Let me talk. I understand a 501c3. I started Save Austin Cemeteries in 2004. And yes, it can be difficult. There are many times when I didn't have anybody who was willing to be on the board, and I had to go, damn it, I got to take another position in order to keep this thing going. When you incorporate part of your bylaws, it's not uncommon that if the corporation fails, then the records would go to the Travis County Commissioners, and the Travis County Commissioners could appoint, if no one's willing to do that, the Travis County Commissioners would appoint trustees. Or, in this case, if you got a family that's coming up going, listen, they tried this, it failed miserably, we're still here, appoint us trustees.
And on that, I love that you said, we tried this and it failed miserably. So someone brought up the initial issues out here. I don't remember who it was because I really didn't turn to look at you. So we have over there, and it is one of the issues, and I'm just going to bring it on out, a trash collection area. You know why we have a trash collection area? Because cemeteries generate a lot of trash. You know what we tried and failed? Dumpsters. Failed. Because the area's not built up enough. They
And
ended
people
up
would come
with
and do
paint,
illegal dumping.
radiator fluid in them, stuff that then the trash wouldn't take. So what you have going on over there, and y'all are welcome to see because we actually did it for this meeting today. You have what happens several times every year. That when there is a large amount of garbage accumulated, someone comes in, his name is Mario, he wasn't able to make it today because he's working. He comes in with a tractor and a dump trailer, and he hauls it all off to the trash, and we start all over again.
He hasn't done it in over 2 years.
Okay.
Not true.
So.
And I have the checks to prove it.
All right, so, and again, this is where we start pointing fingers, and I don't want to do that. I went over and looked at it. When I first came up today, I noticed the pile of dirt was gone. I said, okay, they've cleaned up.
Yep.
And I went and looked, and they cleaned up behind the building. But what I noticed, and I can confirm, I went over there, and Mario, you paid Mario, he took the dirt over there, and he covered up the trash.
That's not true.
I'll show
He
you.
hauled off two. Well,
He
some
may
of
have
it is
hauled off
always.
too, but I will show you
Some
trash
of-
that was on my video that is still in place and covered
Some
up
of
with
it
dirt.
will work that way. You can't get every freaking scrap, but
Okay, so-
but the dumpsters failed.
So again,
People come
People come and dump there.
I understand that. I truly do understand that. I understand that. And again, this is where if you had a board of trustees and you could fence the thing off, you wouldn't have that issue. But I know by looking at that, and one of the things I did when I documented in 2013 when I was here, this year when I was here, when you look at the trash that was there, the majority of it was plastic flowers and funerary trash.
From
Excuse me.
cleaning up a cemetery.
I get that.
At night they come and dump mattresses,
Uh-huh.
and everything.
You know why those aren't out here? Because people haul them off.
I've been working here since I've been 8 years old with my grandpa, and I'm still cleaning up the cemetery.
Right, no, I get that. And I'm not saying that anybody should do that for free.
All I think we're trying to say is you can accomplish a lot of this, but you're going to add a problem.
Exactly.
You create a board, you create this.
That gives you legal.
I'm telling you what happens.
I have two.
If you don't keep up, like she said,
Not with
the board becomes defunct, and Travis County comes in, then you're going to let Travis County manage.
And they don't manage. They just walk away from it.
So really, what's the deal here? I think the deal is we're just all trying to come together. We do have some folks over here. I realize you guys think that the white people don't take care of their cemeteries over here, and it's not true. I have family here, and I know a lot of us do. You know, we come, like the other day my aunt just died, and my aunt was the one that personally came and cleaned up the cemetery. I walked over there to try to look at a spot for her, and somebody had put a bunch of trash literally right on top of where we had cleaned. Now, I can't drag that stuff off. I'm not physically able to do it. So I think that really what we're looking at is a viable way to come together. If there is money to be made, if there's rent, if there's anything, we're just looking for it to be managed responsibly and shared in, like, maybe helping clean up the cemetery. Maybe working on the deeds, getting it deeded. Maybe, there's a lot of things. We could build a fence here. We could do a lot of things with this, but we could do it together.
True. Exactly. Do it together.
To explore. I mean, you can explore. I don't have a vested interest in it, right? But what I'm saying is you could do this without necessarily having to organize a board.
And then
I don't think anyone is
Not a formal board. You can.
Right.
I mean, we could sit here and create a board right now.
This is the first time most of us have
You
even
could
ever
exchange
met.
phone numbers.
Yeah.
Are we willing, let's get to know each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's work together.
Because this is our
My sister
people.
came last time there was a cleanup, and she came and volunteered. We knew about it.
Yeah,
You know.
Sandra called me and we talked and we say, it's so good to meet you. I'll go out there and help you.
Yeah.
And she says, you can bring some of your group. And I said, the only problem with that is that we were scheduled a cleanup day, so I couldn't tell my group to come out twice.
We
and
never
so,
knew anybody out here.
I was willing to pay, and I could not even get people that I could pay to come out.
Exactly. That's the point. At the end of the day, no matter how many boards and legal things you have, it isn't about mouth and it isn't about paper. It's about back. Your ass got to get out here and put your back into it. Yeah.
Can I say one thing really quick? Okay, so we all have a good heart here.
Yeah.
We all want what's best.
Yes.
I have a gentleman right here. His mother just passed away. His mother was homeless. One of the oldest, longest living homeless women in Austin. And she would come to my house. She would panhandle for money. She got $2,000, bought a car. She came to my house, borrowed my tools, and would come out here almost every weekend for a couple of years. And she personally, literally cleaned up this place. Didn't ask for a dime. But she was kind of setting it up because I think she knew this is where she was going to go.
Yeah.
That was the purpose of the cemetery.
And that's one of the things that I see, that the plot owner, or Mr. Jones, gave us the opportunity for burial for all of us, for all the group. And why sell a piece of property when there's more space over there to use for burial?
And that,
we're a big family. It grows and grows. Why do we want to consider selling something that is given to
and that's
us
what
and
gives you
not
the generations that you continue the generational. This is important to us. This is where our dead are. Now, when I die, you come clean it, and you teach your kids to come clean it. That's where you get it.
But not many cemeteries have a business on them like there is today. That's unheard
Well,
of.
honey, that's actually the
This
law.
could be seed money.
No, but
that
that's
could help clean up.
how are they paying taxes on the building and stuff like
I
that?
think discussions like that shouldn't be like in a big group. You guys could get together
Yeah.
and discuss all that.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering,
We're all here
we've
together.
been here a long time, and we really haven't seen any activity over there. All of a sudden, y'all show a lot of interest. I was just wondering why y'all show so little interest. Why?
So the answer to that.
I tried to bury my father here,
Well, he's right there. You're maintaining that, y'all. You got him buried right there.
but I had nothing for the funeral home to say. Do you have permission? Who is managing that cemetery? There was nobody to raise their hand and say me.
Oh.
I did.
So
But I had to go through all the fight, the fight and the fuss. And how many days did they give you to bury and put somebody in the ground?
you have to pay for so,
And then I had to hire companies to come and dig up the dead trees and the debris in the area that he was supposed to be in.
Everybody has to do that.
So is we had somebody that was drunk or high or something that came through.
That happened to us too,
with a
but we
truck.
cleaned it up.
Okay.
But
So
you have family members alive to do it. They ran over graves where their family members are no longer here. We don't know who they are.
Died in 1930, so who was there to protect and be a voice for that person over there?
okay, so we're gonna stop this back and forth. This was designed to be the first of as many meetings as we felt necessary to get the word out, to think about what was said, to have discussions amongst yourself, and then come back to yet another meeting and probably a third meeting to come to conclusion on if you want to incorporate. If you choose not to incorporate, then that's probably okay too. You just won't be able to solve those issues. If you choose not to incorporate, again, I don't know, but that guy over there, that property is lost to you. That ability is lost to you.
How did we get together as a group to go
And go clean the property.
But again,
No, it's not.
burial property?
What right do you as a group? You don't own the property. You have no legal authority to tell him anything.
But he can't prove that he has any right either.
I understand that.
So if we clear cut it, he's just out of luck.
But again,
He'll end up
the
being
way
in
we
the
did
wrong.
things back in the day, in the 1930s, is different from the way we do things now.
So us as a community, if we all talked right now, got together and we went and fenced that property off with his stuff in it, left the gate to where he could get it off, and we started burying people over there buying plots, he can't say nothing to us.
No.
Exactly.
He can't. That's the point.
Why
That's-
can't we sell that property though and use that
You don't
seed
own
money
You don't own it.
as if we incorporate?
If you
we do.
incorporate,
There's two separate
Wait,
deeds.
wait.
There's three separate deeds.
Now
here.
you own it.
Wait a minute, though. You have to really think about that before you do it. Because when you talk about a cemetery, you're talking about perpetual care that's eternity.
No.
There's no way you can sell that piece of property for enough money that would even take care of the next 15 years, much
Again,
less
she's wrong.
150.
these cemeteries are not required by state law to be perpetual or endowment care.
No, I'm saying that when you talk about collecting money that's going to take care of the cemetery in the future, you have to remember that you're not talking about the next 10 years. You're talking about the next 100, 200, 500.
And
you will
again,
never get
once
enough
you-
Don't
money
want his money
off of that.
collected to put in somebody's pocket.
Okay, wait, stop.
Exactly.
Let me answer this.
And you lose your generations. You lose new kids that are going to be buried in there that will raise
let me
the
answer
kids.
the question.
Yeah.
So first off, a board of trustees, you don't sell cemetery property anymore. You sell an interment right. You sell the right to put a body in the ground, much like you do buying a condo. Okay, that's the interment right. Little cemeteries like this are not managed by the Banking Commission or the Texas Funeral Association or anything like that. They're left to the plot owners to manage. State law says you have to keep a couple of pieces of information. You receive a body, when you received it, where you put them, who they are if you know that, and then there's one other thing, it's on the list. You are not required to be a perpetual care cemetery. When you sell somebody an interment right, ideally, when you give somebody a place and they pay a one-time maintenance fee, do they get a deed or any piece of information that tells them what their expectations are?
We tell them verbally.
Okay.
What they are required to do. and
So,
how they-
so we have a verbal agreement that is not binding. Essentially, what you should have is a deed or a piece of paper that.
Because most of them are relatives of relatives that are there, so it's a bond.
Well, no, I understand that.
But making
again,
a piece of
cemetery
paper
is
is
a
nothing.
business.
Anybody
a
can do
cemetery
that.
essentially is a business, and it should be run like a business, not a family operation. Okay? So, we've had this one meeting. I'll be more than happy to answer questions. I know several of you are hot and you want to get on your way.
I don't. I have plenty of time.
Okay. Sign up. If you're on the sign up list, especially if you have an email, I'll be able to let you know when we're going to have another meeting. Again, you don't have to attend these meetings. According to state law, all that is necessary to do is to post this sign and put an ad in the newspaper. And again, sometime in the future, I would encourage you to change the date on that sign to another future date, run an ad in the newspaper and say, listen, we're going to vote on this, we're going to put this to an end. Right here. We're going to vote yes or no.
Will there be multiple signs because everybody that goes that way will see it?
I understand. And we can put multiple signs.
I paid $50 for this sign out of my pocket. So if y'all want to let me know or give me some of the proceeds from the
Or,
Hispanic
we'll
section
put up
and
several
agriculture,
signs. And again,
let me know.
and again,
I thought he had done it. I'm sorry.
no. So again, it could be that at this point, if the people in this community want to address their issues through here and say, listen, this is what we think, and then we can sit down and talk about it. And we say, listen, we're going to have another meeting in, let's say, March. And then we'll hammer out, we'll answer some of those questions, because I'm sure there's going to be questions that I haven't thought of. Again, I'm not the expert on this, but I'm somebody who's done it a couple of times. And I've got people behind me who are telling me this is the direction you should go.
So if they don't choose to incorporate, can we incorporate our own?
Well, that was brought up here. I don't know, because typically you incorporate the whole piece of property.
But this is two different deeds.
It's on
No,
a deed?
it's on one deed.
One deed.
It's on one deed.
I thought it was separate.
And when you look at the
Yep,
Texas,
one deed.
when you look at the Travis County Appraisal District, it appears to be two separate pieces of property.
Okay.
It is one.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a question. So it's one big
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
This is per se the common ground.
Yeah.
Per se. That is on the common ground.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Again, one property that rent money is going to there.
And again, we're starting to point fingers.
No, I'm asking
we
you a
just need
question.
to know.
No,
I really need to
again,
know
so
how I find that information out.
no, that's true. That's part of the decision. So let's say they choose not to incorporate.
But that's on common ground, isn't it? It's not a,
Well, no, it is. When you look at the old plats, if they choose not to incorporate the Mexican cemetery, the Hispanic cemetery, then I believe you could choose to incorporate, and you would include the common grounds, because theirs is just that little piece. If that argument is, this is our cemetery, this is ours, when you look at the deeds and the plats, it clearly shows a defined area.
So how many acres are we talking about?
So again,
A little over 3.
So the question is, how many acres are there?
money going only there?
I think so.
You think so? Is that right? Are you the one in charge of it? The money that's paid for rent for the crematory, where does that go? Just to the Hispanic side?
It's just
Yes or no?
Yes or no? Is it
Yes or no? Just to the Hispanic side.
It goes to the common area.
cleaning.
So and again,
So it doesn't
that's
go
where
in
you
there?
need.
No, it goes to the common area.
Where's
Yeah.
the money going?
All of this here.
This parking lot
Yeah.
driveway.
Where's the money
Yeah.
going?
Yeah,
Okay,
and
okay,
that building
okay.
area.
Stop.
One
The
more
common
question,
area.
then I'll stop.
Okay.
So in the common area, let's just say he's paid $2,000 a month for rent. Y'all paid Mario a check to clean the common area. Y'all pay him $2,000 a month to pick up a mattress? Yep.
Okay.
So again,
Y'all do. $2,000 a month.
no. That's
I
a
made
number.
that number up. So
Right.
I only paid $2,000 a month rent.
So
That's what we're saying.
This is where you have
Things-
to.
All the money from that rent goes to Mario.
No. Stop.
I need
Stop.
Mario.
No.
You're making assumptions.
She was exactly.
You're making
I'm not
assumptions,
making this-
and
I'm
this
asking
is
a
why it's
question that
important to
nobody
have.
can answer, and they're right here apparently.
Time out.
They know.
Time out. This is why it's important to have a group of people and not just one people running the show. Because if you have a board of directors, then you have transparency and accountability.
They're calling us idiots because we have word of mouth deeds.
I understand. Truly, I do. I understand the dynamic.
Everybody here has thank you for that.
So again, this is, I don't know which way it's going to go. The question was, if they decide not to incorporate, could you do this? Most likely.
I want to incorporate.
Okay.
Wait a minute. No, that doesn't make sense. If this is all one deed,
I understand that. And again,
they can't incorporate. We can't incorporate. 'cause
So
we
we're
have
right.
one.
We talked about coming together, and now we've decided to be decisive.
So, yeah.
I don't like that direction at all.
We asked, could you, if they didn't choose?
right. And again, I don't know the
They're
answer to that.
They can incorporate.
I don't know the answer to that.
They
And it
can't
could be
incorporate
that.
without us.
Because they're going to protect
Exactly.
the family business.
No,
got
see
an
that you're
important
working
Sure.
on assumptions.
No, we ain't.
I'm
Yes.
standing back and I'm listening and I ain't said nothing. Wouldn't it be just so simple to everybody? Third Sunday of every month, get your boots on,
And come
out
clean.
here and let's work. We don't
Exactly.
need all the legal mumbo jumbo.
Exactly.
Everybody to come together, be one. Stop all of the crap.
So you can do that.
Okay.
But again, you're still going to have arguments about where's the money going.
No, you're not, because we're going to come together and share all that information.
Okay.
That's what we're here to do. Come together.
So All right, I'm gonna adjourn this. If you want to talk to me, come talk to me. I encourage you to talk to Vera and bring your comments to her. She and I can work closely together. Huh? Oh, there's a Facebook page. There's a Facebook page. You can leave comments on there. I know some of you don't do Facebook. You can go to YouTube videos and see what's there. Just trying to be transparent.